I'm here today with my brother, my big bro, Bernard Algarin, Army veteran. He told me I don't represent enough, so he brought me a hat and told me you're a veteran, bro. But Aliel, I feel like really you're not a veteran unless you was in a wartime situation sometimes. What you think about that?
I just heard a guy on some podcast. I think it was a podcast I was watching. He was like, from the time you decided to sign the dotted line and raise your hand when you joined, you decided to go through the training. You decided to learn how to go and kill and fight and do all the Army stuff on top of your specialty that you learned. And even if you didn't go to war, you signed up for that. So if it would have popped off, you would have been there. You'd have been ready. You ready to go. You signed up for it. That's what you signed up for. You signed to give your life up for your loved ones and your country and the Constitution. So just doing that, just knowing that
that's more than some Americans
personally gave your life, you were probably the 1% of the total population that said, you know what? If this shit pops off, if it pops off,
you can curse, man. It's all good.
All right. If it pops off, I'm there. I took the training. I got the training. I got my rifle assigned to me, and if it's go time, it's go time. If you were lucky enough not to have a war in the years you were in, that's not your fault. But you were ready.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to me, and I kind of skeeted, and then on the way out, and I just really ducked two major wars actually.
Well, look at me. When the first kind of major scuffle that what I was in was Panama, and I was in basic training. Or the drill sergeants were saying, "Oh yeah, let's go." I was like, "Yeah, we're still in basic training. We haven't had our training yet." So then the first Iraq war, I was in AIT. I was at Fort Huachuca. So I was like, I want to go. They were like, you still haven't finished your training. You're only halfway done. And by the time I finished my training for counterintelligence agent was 2 years long. By the time I was done and ready to go, it was over. They were over there still, but it wasn't like fighting. They were just kind of teaching them and building schools and doing that stuff. So I got to go to Korea instead, which is still an active war zone because the Korean War has never been officially over.
With North Korea and South Korea. So there's is it demilitarized?
The demilitarized zone. And I was so close to North Korea that they actually called us the speed bump to the south. We were in artillery range from North Korea.
Okay.
So if anything popped up, we were going to be gone first.
What countries were you able to visit while you were in the service?
I've been stationed in, lived in for at least a year. It was Korea, and then I was deployed to Bosnia when they had their civil war, whatever their war was over there. And that was at the end of my career. At the end of my 10 years, I only did 10 years. At the end of my 10 years, I deployed to Bosnia when they were still, and then while I was there, Kosovo kicked off with Milosevic. So we kind of shot up there and did our little bit of things there while I was there, and then to help that little situation out. That's about it. And I've driven through like Turkey and Germany to get to the other places where that was just kind of like a stop off. Actually, crazy things. The first place we stopped off to eat in Turkey was at a McDonald's.
In Turkey?
In Turkey. And I remember thinking to myself, being a lifelong foodie that I am, it's like the last place I want to eat at in a foreign country that I didn't plan to go to, but I just happened to be driving through, is a freaking McDonald's.
But some of these countries, right, even though it's McDonald's, it's not really the same McDonald's.
Yes, but so this one wasn't one of the good McDonald's.
Meaning there was no different food?
Meaning the meat was gray.
Oh, no.
And the fries was super soggy and greasy. I was like, yes, I'm not gonna eat this. I'm just gonna be hungry. I don't care. I threw my food away. I drank the soda because the soda is soda. You can only mess up soda so bad.
So while deployed and well, actually in the field, a lot of field training and doing field
I did
exercises.
do field, yeah, I did do a lot of that, and I did meet a lot of foreign people doing field exercises because we would do joint stuff, and they would come people from Spain and Italy and Germany would come in and do training with us.
Other soldiers from these countries,
right, at American bases.
Okay,
they would come in and we train for 30, 40 days, 60 days at a time, and then they would go back to their countries and stuff. So I met a lot of cool people, 2 cool guys from Spain that told me I look like I belong in northern Spain because everybody in northern Spain, they say look like me. Got a little bit more darker skin, curly dark hair. And then later on in life, I found out that my great grandparents were from Spain.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, well, man, maybe they knew what they were talking about, I guess. The little bit of information I am able to get from my dad just basically comes out of the blue. He just says, oh, yeah,
randomly.
My grandparents were from Spain, came over from Spain. I was like,
yeah, that would be nice to know. But here's the thing about parents, and I think unless you really pry and you really dig into your lineage and you ask these hard questions to some parents, they don't just divulge and just give the information freely. You know what I'm saying? You really have to go really prying and digging and looking. And sometimes even when you pry, they don't want to give up some of the information.
It depends on the parent and what they've been through. Because apparently my dad didn't have a very good upbringing with as far as he had a pretty rough childhood as far as his parents, maybe a little, drinking problems and maybe some mental health problems and all that. And a lot of his siblings and stuff, have gone through some stuff, and he really don't talk about any of that stuff.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you think any of that stuff is hereditary and any of that stuff gets passed on through whether it's like consciously or subconsciously passed on to children from parents, and then the children continue these same behaviors with their children? Like you mentioned your dad, it wasn't really a good upbringing. And do you feel like you have any traumas or any mental health issues as far as that you inherited from your parents?
I'm thinking possibly the ways that we initially react to some of the stuff we go through. Mm-hmm. Either we picked it up from watching our parents' reactions through our whole lifetime, or it could be hereditary as far as, the bipolar stuff. Because, back in my parents are old, and they had us. My mom was in her 50s when she had me and my sister. So they were like really, really old school. And, all this naming of different stuff is kind of new. You know what I'm saying? Within our, even when I was in grade school and high school, all this ADHD
meaning
stuff.
The diagnosis of what the behaviors that people have.
And especially for folks that didn't have a lot of money to go to all the specialists and stuff. For us, all this stuff is fairly new. ADHD, bipolar, on the spectrum, all this stuff is fairly new. And, and our parents probably had, they've had the exact same things, but back then it was just like, oh, no, they just...
brush it off.
Yeah, just suck it up. Suck it up, rub a little dirt on it, you'll be all right. But we didn't realize that there was real trauma going on from their whole life and just the way they're wired that they went through, but now they just have names for it.
Do you feel you have any mental health issues?
Absolutely.
I think
I'm nuts.
you're just owning it.
Yeah, hey, it is what it is. I go back and I'm sorry, excuse me.
You're good.
I go back and I think about the way I've reacted to certain situations in my life and how it's progressed. Some of the stuff I've caught myself on a lot of stuff as far as I learned, okay, this reaction wasn't healthy. And then I've been able to tone down a lot of stuff, but then I still have these instances where it's just like my wife and my kids just call me the Incredible Hulk because I just go from 0 to 1,000 in like an instant.
So obviously you're in my home, you're visiting me, and we were friends for a whole lot of years.
Been friends for more than half of our life. Yep.
Okay, so I learned a lot of things from you. Also, I learned a lot of things by watching some of the relationships that you were in and how it affected you.
Yeah.
Okay, so being respectful to everybody, your first marriage or
Best we can.
your first as best as we can,
As
right?
best as we can.
Your first situation that I was able to witness. I think you were actually coming out of the back end of it when I met you.
Yep.
Was with your first child,
My first spouse, my first
everything,
yeah.
pretty much. I mean, as far as a marriage and family is concerned,
Right.
we're not going to say any names out of respect, but we know who you are, and
you know
who we're talking about. All right, so we had a conversation earlier off camera, and we were talking about relationships with kids and everything, and you told me basically that you felt you could have did things differently as far as your separation from your first marriage with your, as far as your child is concerned, and it kind of strained the relationship until your child was older, and to be able to realize and have control of her own mental health, and realize that I do want a relationship with my father, and I do want to tell him how the separation affected me. And she voiced some of those things to you, and you were able to mend some relationships and move forward and build a new relationship
Right.
from the damage that was done in the beginning.
Right. And
how's that going so far?
And it wasn't that it was a broken relationship, because I still called her every now and then, but it wasn't. It was. I was a lot.
So just explain to the people exactly what happened.
All right. So
I mean, you don't have to go into extreme detail.
I'll try to keep it as basic as possible.
Right. But how did you react to whatever happened with your situation, with your first marriage?
Right. So I was young. I was 20, I believe, when my first daughter was conceived in the Army. Pretty fresh in the Army. Hadn't gotten even finished my training yet. So then my training was broken up into 2 years, and a year in between, where that's when they sent me to Korea to work on the first half of the training, and then I went back and finished the expert half of the training. And then just before I left for Korea is when my first daughter was conceived. I think I had just turned 20. And then while I was in Korea, being from the old school parent lineage, you got a girl pregnant, now you got to marry her kind of thing. I was just over the phone hey, we just get married. And me not knowing everything that was going on while I was in Korea with the mother. So we got back. I think I took a break from Korea, took a month leave, went over there, got married, did all that stuff, went back to Korea afterwards. And then everything just kind of fell apart after that. And even though I hung in for a long time with that marriage, because I'm a Pisces.
Sometimes people hold on.
Yeah, I'm a Pisces, so it's hard to,
You're right.
Yeah,
too long.
Yeah.
And it does damage to people that's involved in the situation by holding on so long.
And I've always been the kind of guy, the kind of person, not just guy, but the kind of person that gets attached to somebody and you fall in love fast and hard, and then you don't know how to get out of that. And you kind of don't want to. It's just mental blockage and all kinds of stuff going on. And you're like, I can make it work, blah, 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 knowing that you can't. You know that you can't make it work, but you think, you convince yourself, I can make it work, I can hang in there, it's going to get better. And it's just punches and punches and punches. And you're like, okay, after 9 years and hanging off the hood of a car doing 75 down the highway, it's like, I think it's over.
I've been a witness to some of these behaviors. I've literally seen you almost break your hands by punching on the roof of your vehicle after having a conversation with your I don't know if it was your ex at the time, or I'm speaking of your first marriage.
Yes.
Because I've been around for a lot of the situations that you've been in, and what I want to get across to some of the guys that are in these relationships. Right. It's about how you control yourself in when you're actually in the moments
Yep.
that you're in these moments, and you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you do something where it's a life changing
Yeah, exactly.
or something detrimental to you where you can't come back
Right.
from.
And we see examples every day. And luckily for me, I'm just speaking for me, I've always had the urge to punch shit, but I've never had the urge to punch a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like like I said, I've busted hands up and stuff, punching walls, punching roofs of cars and stuff. But luckily for me, I've never had the urge to actually put my hands on somebody. I've wanted to, but I've never done it. Just because the thought of me in jail, no, it's not.
Not only that, it's a part of self-control.
Plus,
You
right.
understand?
And if I didn't have any self-control for anything else, I pride myself to not ever put my hands on anybody like that. Although they put hands on me,
And still,
it's another story. But I still was like, you know what? It's more acceptable for them to put their hands on me than me to put their hands on them, because I'll be going to jail.
right.
So I let everything slide and take it out on inanimate objects
Real
or
quick.
myself.
I've had my hands put on me by family members where I felt like if I'd have put my hands back on them, it would be
It'd be more detrimental.
right. And it's rough. It's rough when you're in those moments and in these situations and look back on hindsight and you're like, could I have done anything differently it wouldn't even have gotten to that point. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
You can't control other people and their emotions either, so you gotta factor that in too.
Do you think you had a part in the way the relationships are in your family right now, and you own some of the fact that you played a part in some of the way the relationships are?
You have to, because it's like you think you're doing the right thing, but just because you think you're doing the right thing, that doesn't mean the other person thinks you're doing the right thing. Everybody else's expectations around you aren't the same as your expectations, and you think that okay, I'm doing everything right. And everybody else around you like, man, this dude ain't doing this, or the other person like, oh, he's not doing that. So you thinking you're doing everything good, and other people's like, they're not meeting the expectations I have for them. Although you think you are, because you're setting your expectations here, but other people might be setting one here, and one here, and you think you're doing everything good. You're doing everything you think you're supposed to be doing, but for them, you're falling short of what their expectations for you. So sometimes you got to just, what I've learned, sometimes you just got to not think about other people's expectations and just do what you feel comfortable doing, because then you're going to put more pressure on yourself, drive yourself even more crazy, and which I've done, and be like, damn, I've done all of this stuff, and it's still, everything's still falling apart. I'm giving my whole paychecks. I'm giving all my time, or I'm not giving any of my time. That's been part of the problem too sometimes. And it's like everything's still shit.